All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to our Wednesday call. We have an amazing call planned for you guys today. So I am so glad that all of you are here. And I know, as usual, we'll probably see more trickle in through the call. We've got an amazing guest speaker that I am so excited to introduce to you guys. And I know he has some incredible content to share. I've been learning from him for years. So you guys are in for a treat today. Now, before we jump in and get started, I just want to share just a couple of announcements here. So we have, just as a reminder, we have started to stream these Zoom calls live on YouTube. So everyone is absolutely welcome to join the Zoom call. You can do that every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Mountain Time by going to mitchandmaelylive.com. Or if you don't want to participate in the call, you just kind of want to watch more passively, we are now streaming it live on YouTube. So you can check it out on our YouTube channel, Flipping with Mitch and Maeli. Again, that's every Wednesday at 7 p.m. It does stream live there, and then it's immediately available for replay, so you can watch it as many times as you want. If there was some good content and you just couldn't take notes, go back and watch it again. You can fast forward, rewind, whatever you want to do. So check that out. Again, it's the YouTube channel Mitch and Maeli Live. Excuse me, YouTube channel Flipping with Mitch and Maeli. And then we have live meetings coming up. In fact, this Tuesday we have a live meeting at 1 p.m. in Salt Lake City. I am going to be sending out an email tomorrow morning, just blasting that out to everybody to make sure that you guys are aware of the details there. I'm actually going to be teaching this one, so you're not going to want to miss it. We got some fun stuff planned for you. So with that said, I want to introduce our guest speaker today. Now, Jeff is somebody that I have known for a really long time. Started out, the first time I met Jeff, I went to a training that he was doing on seller finance properties. And he did an incredible job. In fact, after I went to that training, I picked up my first seller finance deal. And let's see, the first one was in Midvale. So within months of going to that training, I ended up with a seller finance deal and have never looked back. That's, in fact, the primary way that we buy our rentals now. And then we got to know each other a little bit and saw each other at networking meetings and became friends over time. And today, Jeff is my attorney, and he does a fantastic job. And this guy is just a wealth of knowledge. And I wanted to share what I get to experience on a regular basis by hanging out with Jeff. I wanted to share that with you guys today. So I'm not going to steal too much of his thunder. I want Jeff to be able to tell his story. So without further ado, guys, welcome Jeff Breglio. Jeff, thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Mitch. Very happy to be here. Always happy to help teach. And yeah, I've been, so first, let me give you a little bit about my background. I started real estate investing in 1999. I bought my first rental property then. Picked up a number of actually a handful of rental properties in 1999, 2000. And I started doing flip projects as well. And on some of my flips, I picked up the flip, did the remodel, and then couldn't sell it and had to turn it into a rental to force a little bit more appreciation over time before I could make a profit on it. And in those days, I was buying properties with conventional financing, even flip projects with conventional financing, going to a loan officer, spending the month of, submitting tax returns in firstborn child's name and getting conventional loans. And I had no idea what hard money was or private money. I had no idea what wholesaling was. I had no idea what seller financing was. And there were very few people around that could educate others 20, 25 years ago. And so as a lawyer, as I started getting into real estate investing, I realized that there was a need for competent legal services to the real estate investing community here locally in Utah. And since I was doing my own investing, at that time as a lawyer, I was doing entertainment law. I was working with film producers, helping film producers raise money to do their film projects and their production contracts. So I was not a real estate lawyer. I was a real estate investor. And then I decided to start doing real estate law and working for other real estate investors, doing their transactional documents, asset protection structuring. And then I sort of evolved into a real estate educator. I teach both locally here in Utah and nationally on real estate investing topics. I teach through a lot of different organizations and RIAs, which are real estate investing associations. And I've created REI Mastery U. The U stands for university. And that is an online and live in-person education, real estate educational platform. So all my years of teaching, all the courses that I've taught, they were almost all videoed. All the blog articles I've written, all the news articles I've written, webinars that I've either hosted or jumped on, all those recordings and all that content is now online at REI Mastery U. I'll tell you more about that a little bit later. And now, for the most part, I still practice law a little bit. I have a handful of clients that I keep. Otherwise, I'm mostly retired from the practice of law. I am a title company owner, so I own a title company and I manage and run that. I have a private lending business, so I'm a private lender. I loan to flippers typically. And then the real estate education. So those are the three businesses that I'm in now. And what we're going to be talking about tonight is, in fact, first, let me see the chat function. If you have questions, probably the easiest thing to do would be to type them into the chat function. I don't know if I see people's hands raised, or I don't know if I would actually see that, but I will monitor the chat window. And so type your questions in the chat window and I'll answer them. You can ask questions at any time. Don't worry about it. If you want to actually verbally ask a question, no problem. You can turn on your microphone and just say, hey, I got a quick question. So you don't need to wait until the end. I can take questions in the middle of it. I've been teaching for 25 years. I'm very good at this. I don't get distracted easily. And what we're going to be talking about tonight is asset protection for any level of investor. This is a very condensed version of a 6-hour class that I teach on asset protection. So I'm going to cover a lot of ground because I want to introduce you to a number of different legal structures that are out there and available to you. I won't be able to go into detail on these structures, but I'm going to give you resources and access to how to get more information on them or information from me. So if you do need additional information on these structures, you'll know where to get it. Okay, so I am going to start. I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint. So I should be able to. Okie doke. Okay. So we're going to kind of start off with Ian Investor. So he's a new investor. He's single. He owns no real estate yet, no real assets, but he is an experienced rehabber. So he's been in the construction industry and he's a great rehabber. And his goal is to build and protect wealth through real estate. And I would imagine that that goal is the same goal as everybody on this call. I would imagine that your goal is to build and protect wealth through real estate, and which is great. I mean, that's what I did. That's what we're all doing, and that's what we're learning to do. So these are some of the structures that I'm going to touch on tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about liability, just kind of what it is, and because that's what you're protecting yourself from and protecting your assets from. Obviously, we'll be talking about LLCs. That's the workhorse. LLCs are probably the most important type of legal entity that you will deal with as a real estate investor. You will have at least one LLC. You may have multiple. I have clients with a dozen or more LLCs. We have different LLCs, but for different purposes that provide different protections and different tax strategies. I will touch on the family limited partnership. It's not as common, but I'll kind of tell you when I do bring that out. The family living trust, that's another very important tool for asset protection structuring. The family living trust doesn't necessarily provide a lot of protection right now while you're alive, but it can provide some protection, and it provides a lot of protection and control over your assets after you die. But we will talk about the family living trust, the asset holding trust. This is a real estate trust. So this is a different kind of trust. This is not the family living trust. It's a very short or small, it's only about 7 pages, of a trust document that's designed specifically for holding real estate. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. And then number 6 is the domestic asset protection trust. This is a higher level, maybe advanced, if you will, asset protection structure. It's highly protective. It's the most protective thing we have basically in the state of Utah, and one of the most protective things in the country. It doesn't work for everybody, but for those for whom it does work, it's a great tool. And I'm going to tell you when and how to use that to protect assets. And then finally, of course, when we talk about asset protection in real estate, not only do you need business entities and structures like LLCs and trusts to protect your assets, you also have to make sure that you're protecting yourself in the transaction itself. So when you're buying and selling real estate, leasing real estate, loaning on real estate, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Good, strong documents, contracts, etc., go a long, long way in protecting yourself beyond just the entities that we're going to talk about. All right, so let's kind of get into this. Business entities. Now, when we say a business entity, these are formal structures recognized by the state, authorized by the state, to provide asset protection or liability protection for the owners of the company. So the 3 main business entities that you'll see are the limited liability companies, or LLCs, corporations, and the family limited partnership. Now, a corporation and real estate usually do not mix at all. So most likely you will never own a corporation for your real estate business. I don't think I've created a corporation for a real estate client in over 20 years. And then the family limited partnership is very similar to an LLC with one big difference. So in an LLC, all the owners of the company, they're called members, right? So a member of an LLC is the owner of the company. And all of the owners have liability protection for acts of the company. So if there's a lawsuit that's against the LLC, they're suing the entity itself and not the owners of it. So the owners of this company are protected, their personal assets are protected, their primary residence will be protected, because the LLC will provide that protection to all the owners. In a family limited partnership, there are 2 kinds of partners, a general partner and a limited partner. Now, the limited partners get the same protection as members of an LLC, so that's great. But the general partners actually have liability risk by being a general partner. There's no liability protection for that general partner. And so when we structure family limited partnerships, typically we may use another entity, maybe a corporation or another LLC, as that general partner, because nobody wants to be the general partner in a family limited partnership, because then they're taking all the risk. Okay? And that's one of the reasons I prefer the LLC. And one of the reasons why almost every business entity that I form for my real estate clients is an LLC, because it really is the best combination of corporate protections that corporations used to give without having to bother with a general partner and the risks that general partners have in partnerships. So you're going to see a lot of LLCs. Trusts, now trusts are a little bit more complicated topic. They're not hard to understand, but they're usually, it's a new thing for most humans, most Americans. Most Americans, we in the business world, you kind of hear LLCs and corporations, you understand that it's a business entity and it's set up to kind of conduct business. You're less familiar with trusts. And trusts are a little bit different than other business entities. And the 3 main trusts that we use in real estate, one, the family living trust. I spoke about that. We'll get more detailed later. The asset holding trust or real estate trust or land trust. That one goes by a number of different names. But the asset holding trust is used in real estate transaction. And then, of course, the asset protection trust, that's the irrevocable, highly protective trust. That's kind of a higher level protection. So that's the overview. The most important thing I can ever tell you about protecting your assets and protecting yourself is be prepared. Do it in advance. Do it now and get things done early. The longer you have your business entity set up, the longer your trusts are established, the greater the protection that you're going to get. And once you run into a problem, let's say you are a flipper and you borrowed hard money to do your flip project, and in this market and the downturn that we had over the last 6 to 9 months, you're struggling to sell your property for a high enough purchase price that's going to pay off your loans, and you're worried about defaulting on a loan, right? Or maybe you have a tenant in a property and they sent you an email saying they slipped and fell on the ice on the driveway and they broke their arm, right? So once you are aware that there's a problem, that problem could be a lawsuit or a debt that's going to be coming after you. But once you know about that problem, there's very little you can do to protect your assets, because anything you do could be construed by the court as hiding assets from the court. So if you're about to be sued and you know it, and you're worried that you're going to lose this lawsuit and there's going to be a big judgment against you, and then you start putting your rental properties or stuff into LLCs, into trust, and start, all these other structures to protect from that lawsuit, it's pretty clear that you're doing it only to avoid paying a judgment on a lawsuit you already know about. And the court can actually unwind all of those transfers of assets to those other entities, pull them back out, force a liquidation, and you're still going to lose the assets. So again, the most important tip I can give you for any kind of asset protection is do it earlier rather than later. Last fall, I started getting a lot of calls from clients worried about their flip projects and defaulting on loans and asking how they could protect their primary residence or protect their other assets. And I said, one, if you don't have them protect them, let's get it done, right? Let's just get it done so that, maybe you'll be successful in this lawsuit and there won't be a judgment against you. And then you've got the protection set up. Or even if you lose, you might lose some of these assets, but at least you've got them in a structure, okay? So let's talk about these business entities and the structures that we're going to use. So let's talk about liability and what liability is. Okay, so here's Ian again. And here's what's most unusual about this that a lot of investors don't understand. There are two kinds of liability, personal and business. Personal liability is something that a liability or a risk that attaches to you as an individual because of something that you as an individual do. The classic example of personal liability is a car accident. If you're driving a car and you're not paying attention, or you're drunk, or you're speeding, and you cause an accident where somebody's injured, you caused the damage. That's your fault. You were driving. And so that liability is going to attach to you as a human being. And once that personal liability attaches to you, a court can go after any asset you own. And when I say any asset, I mean literally any asset. That includes LLCs that you may own, right? It could include things that are in your family trust. So the personal liability is a big one. Business liability, on the other hand, is a risk that arises by the business that you're engaged in. So let's take it, you're real estate investors. You're probably one of two business owners. You're either a rental person, a landlord, and you got rental properties, or you're a flipper, right? Maybe you're a wholesaler, private lender. There's other ways to make money in real estate, but those are the two big ones, right? Flipping and rentals. If you're a landlord and you own a rental property, you're in the business of being a landlord. That's the business that you are engaged in. That's your industry. And there are risks of being a landlord. And one of the biggest risks of being a landlord is the slip and fall, right? You've got tenants in the house. They're living there. They're sleeping there, which is really important, right? They may have children there. There's stair So So there's a lot of ways to get hurt in and around a property. So if your tenant slips and falls in the property, that's business liability. And it's no different than if you owned a grocery store and one of your customers came into the grocery store and slipped on a banana peel. And once they slip on that banana peel, they fall down, they break their neck, they're injured. That's a liability because you're in the business of being a grocery store owner. Well, no different if you're a landlord, you're in the business of being a landlord, and one of the people that you invited into your business, your rental property, was injured within your business. And in that case, they are going to sue the business, right? So they're going to sue the LLC. If you don't have an LLC set up and you're renting the property to your tenants as an individual and they slip and fall, then they're going to sue you as a human being because you, the human being, is the landlord. Hope that makes sense. I hope that you kind of caught that. So if you don't have an LLC set up, all your liability is going to be personal. And that is the one thing you really want to avoid is eliminating or reducing that personal risk. Business liability, we have structures that help protect us and our assets from that business liability. Okay? So because we have two liabilities, we have two protections, right? The corporate veil protection, that's something that most of you probably are familiar with. You may have heard that term, corporate veil protection. What that does is that's going to protect Ian from the slip and falls. So that's going to protect him from the business liability. And every LLC that we set up comes with this corporate veil protection. So if you have your rental properties in an LLC and one of your tenants slips and falls, they're going to sue the LLC. The LLC provides that corporate veil protection. So you, your primary residence, your other companies, your other assets, your savings account, your jewelry, etc., those are all protected. Okay? Now, this LLC can protect assets as well from personal liability. And it's called a charging order protection. I'm not going to get super detailed on it or explain kind of how it works. It's a complicated legal thing. But here's how it plays out. Let's say I've got an LLC. My wife and I have an LLC. And we've got a couple of rental properties in there. And my wife gets into a car accident. So she's driving down I-15, it's raining, skids, kills the family, and now there's a $2 million judgment against my wife. And so the court is looking, well, what does she own? What assets does she own? Well, she owns 50% of an LLC. And so the court and the plaintiffs are going, wait a minute, wow, she owns 50% of an LLC. That LLC owns 5 rental properties. She's got millions of dollars of assets in this LLC. I want that money, right? The plaintiffs want to go after those rental properties in the LLC that she owns. Now, if a court allows those plaintiffs to go after the rental properties in the LLC, somebody else is getting hurt. Who else is getting hurt in that situation? Well, I am, right? I own 50% of those rentals too. So if there's a forced liquidation of my rental properties, I just lost my rental properties. But I didn't do anything wrong, right? I didn't get into a car accident. So the court is not going to punish me for my wife's accident. And instead of allowing the plaintiffs to liquidate those rentals to pay the judgment, the court's going to give a charging order against my wife's interest in the LLC so that the assets in the LLC are totally protected. They're not going to be liquidated. They're still there. They're still tenants. They're still creating cash flow for the company and me. But if the LLC does distribute out profits, any profit that would have gone to my wife now goes to those plaintiffs. And then the LLC can just decide not to issue any distributions and not pay out profits. And if we don't pay out the profits, those plaintiffs are going to pay taxes on money they don't get. That was probably a lot of information. But what I kind of want you to understand about that is if you have an LLC with more than one member on it, like a husband and wife or a partner, the assets inside that LLC are protected from liquidation from a personal lawsuit against one of the members. Okay. So even though that personal liability is really big and can go after a lot of things, it can still protect your real estate assets from those personal judgments as long as you have a second person on the LLC. So when I do these structures for my clients, and I'm setting up an LLC to hold rental properties, I always ask, are you married? Do you have a partner or maybe your kids? Putting another member into that LLC adds protection, okay? So that's the great thing about LLCs. They do provide quite a bit of protection for you and the assets that the LLC owns from these two kinds of liability protection, okay? That's just a little more data. So what I want to do now is first, now that I can hopefully see, I think I have to stop sharing my screen to see the chat function. So how do I turn that off now? Share. I'll stop share, there we go. Okay, so any questions on liability before we move on? I just want to make sure that we're kind of covered there. Understanding that, there are risks associated with being in real estate. You own a very big asset. It's a property, it's a house, a building, a multifamily, an apartment, a commercial office building, right? These are big things. And there's a lot of value there. Some of these properties are worth millions or tens of millions of dollars, right? And so they become big targets for lawyers looking to make money off, honestly. And there's a lot of lawyers out there that really just want a case to make money. And so if you're going to be in real estate, it's probably not a matter of if you ever get sued, but a matter of when. You will probably end up in some lawsuit at some point. Do not stress about it. Do not worry about it. It's a badge of honor. It's an accomplishment.
It's a rite of passage.
It's a rite. Yes, it's a rite of passage, right? It's like, I just got sued for the first time.
Yeah,
right?
Got that out of the way.
If you're structured,
onward.
If you're structured correctly, you got the correct documents, then you're going to be in really good shape, right? You're going to be really well protected, and it's going to be very difficult for anybody to kind of come after you. Kind of one side note to that, I have a lot of clients say, I want bulletproof. I don't want to go after anything. I want to protect every penny that I've ever made. You have to remember that our court system isn't designed to protect your assets. It's not what the court system is designed to do. The court system is designed to compensate people who have been injured so that the person who caused the injury pays for the damage that they caused, right? Our legal system is designed to make you pay, right? It's designed that way specifically. Right? If you cause damage to somebody, if you kill a family of 5, you're going to be paying out something, right? And you should, in my opinion, you should, right? If you cause somebody damage, you should pay for that damage. But there are ways that we can protect a significant amount of our assets, right? And that legally and justifiably and morally, right? What I don't do and what is impossible to do is to hide and protect all of your assets from every possible lawsuit at any time. Okay.
In that light, I actually have a couple of questions, Jeff. So clarification on the charging order protection with LLCs. Does it work for if you're married to your partner?
Yes, it does work for married spouses. Yes. Okay. So being married doesn't lose you that protection. The charging order protection originated by protecting innocent people, right? And here's a structure issue. And if you go to a lawyer, and they're going to set up an LLC for you and your spouse, very often they will tell you that because you're married, that you could file the LLC as a single member LLC, avoid the tax return. So you save money with your CPA by not filing the tax return because it's a single member LLC. That's bad advice. If you have more than one member of an LLC, even if it's your spouse, that LLC is going to file a partnership tax return. And that's exactly what you want to do because you want to be a partnership. You want a partner in this LLC because that's where you're getting the protection. If you don't file a partnership tax return, what you're doing is you're telling the world, including the courts, that it's not a multi-member LLC, it's single member, and therefore there's no innocent person on this LLC to protect, and the court's going to go after all the assets in the LLC.
I've learned
Okay?
over time, my accountant, more often than I thought, not a lot, but more often than I thought would happen, my accountant tells me to do different things than my attorney tells me to do, or you're my attorney, so what you tell me to do, and for different reasons. My
Yes.
accountant might be telling me to do something that is beneficial to my tax bottom line, and then you're telling me something like, I'll bring it to you, and you'll be like, no, don't do that. Like you're opening yourself up to liability here, and
Liability, right.
one of the things my accountant told me was, hey, you got to get rid of all these LLCs. Like let's just get down to one entity. And Jeff, I mean, we've got millions and millions of dollars of real estate, right? And
Yeah.
so those are conversations whenever your accountant and your attorney are coming from two different
Disagree.
places. And if your accountant tells you to do something, you should probably check it with your attorney, and vice versa, right? And then you make the decision, because they'll break down why it's going to be a good idea on the tax side or why it's going to be a good idea on the asset protection side. But I've had to make that decision as to, okay, which benefit do I want, moving
Yeah.
forward. So
The same thing arises if you go to an estate planning attorney to set up your family trust. Now, an estate planning attorney, that's their focus, estate planning, to make sure that your estate is well covered after you die. And typically, what they're going to recommend is once they set up your family trust, they're going to say, great, you've got an LLC with rental properties in it. That's great. Glad you're a real estate investor. Let's make the owner of your LLC the family trust. And the reason they're going to suggest that is because then it takes the LLC, puts it underneath or within your family trust and part of your estate, which is an admirable goal. It's a good goal to make sure that all of your assets are connected to your estate. That's good. The problem with that is, yes, it accomplishes your estate planning goal, but it ruins your liability protection goal. Because you took an LLC that maybe had husband and wife on there, a multi-member LLC with better protection, and now you've made it a single member LLC that's owned by the family trust. So you just lost your protection.
yep.
So when I set up family trusts, I set up the family trust, but then I keep the LLC owned by the husband and wife. And I can connect that LLC through a different document called a transfer on death agreement to the family trust. And so I keep husband and wife on the LLC for my asset protection goals. I connect it to the family trust with the transfer on death agreement, thereby accomplishing my estate planning goals. And now I've got both, right? That's because I'm an asset protection attorney, not an estate planning attorney.
Right.
Okay. So I do things differently than they do because I am achieving different goals than they are,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You brought up trust. I'm sorry. One more question. I did want
Yeah.
to bring up
Uh,
the domestic asset protection trust. Are you going to bring up that up later? Am I spoiling anything?
yes.
Or
Yep.
okay, then
Nope.
I'll
I'll
save my
bring it up in
question
a
for
minute.
later.
Okay. Okay. Let's go back to the screen share.
I hogged all that time. Anybody else have any other questions for Jeff right now?
Okay. Real quickly, there's just some notes on setting up your LLC. Typically, we don't put last names or recommend not putting your last name on the LLC, right? That's just a privacy thing. For your address of the LLC, you can use a post office like box. You can't use PO boxes. The state of Utah does not allow a PO box to be the address of your company. But UPS stores have mailboxes that have a street address with a suite number, right? And so we recommend that instead of your home address. Because if you put your home address on your LLC, somebody can go to this Division of Corporations website, search your LLC name, and then get your address and find out where you live. And there are two cases. It's been about 3 or 4 years now, but about 3 or 4 years ago, there were two two cases almost back to back. One, a landlord, a local here, Utah landlord, evicted some tenants, and then friends of the tenants that were evicted showed up at the landlord's house, knocked on his door. When he opened his door, they shot him point blank in the chest. True story. Fortunately, he lived, right? But he could have avoided all of that by using a post office, a PO box like address instead of his home address on his LLC. And another one, after an eviction, the tenant showed up at the landlord's house. They argued at the door. Then they started to leave. Then this landlord was an idiot, and he decided to chase after them. And so while he was chasing them down the street because they threatened him, they turned around and they shot him, and he was killed. So please be aware that there are risks of being a landlord. And this is about protecting yourself more than just your assets. It's protecting your life and your family. So other than that, there's the two things I want to talk about on that side, because those are things that when you set up an LLC, those are just two great tips for protection that a lot of people just miss, right? That you don't even think about. Okay, so Ian picks up his first rental property, and this little orange box, that means that rental property is owned in an LLC because it's now contained or owned by the LLC. There was a slip and fall out the rental property, but Ian, this little red line, is protected because the slip and fall, they're going to sue the LLC, not Ian. So Ian's protected, his personal residence is protected, his personal assets are protected, his savings account is protected. The only thing he may lose is that rental property in that LLC. Okay. Same thing. If he's in a car accident, we talked about that charging order protection, so I'm not going to get more into that. Okay. Now, we did say that we like to have two or more members of this LLC, right? But what if you're single? What do? Right? And you don't have a spouse or a child or a business partner to put on that LLC with you. Okay. A couple of things we can do. We can set up a holding company in a state that does provide that charging order protection on single member LLCs. The state of Wyoming allows that. The state of Delaware allows that. And so very often I will set up a Wyoming holding company that provides that charging order protection. That Wyoming LLC then owns a Utah LLC, usually a series LLC, that then owns the rental properties. So what we're doing is we're just sticking another layer of protection in between you and the LLC that adds that charging order protection. So that's the most common way. Sometimes we can create a corporation to partner with you on your LLC. So now we have two members. That brings up tax issues, so it's not one of my favorite ones. And then the third way is you can use an asset protection trust. An asset protection trust is even stronger than the charging order protection. It's even stronger. So, and we're going to get to that down the road. So now that we have a little bit more about LLCs, I do want to bring up the series LLC, okay? Because that is the go-to LLC choice for landlords, okay? A series LLC is it is an LLC like all others, okay? Has that corporate veil protection, has the charging order protection, but it does the series LLC does one additional thing. In the old day, I say the old days, 20 years ago when I first started in this business as a lawyer, and because in a lawsuit, a slip and fall lawsuit at a rental property, they're going to sue the company that owns the rental property, and you do risk that one property. So the question I always get is from clients, they say, hey, I'm going to set up my LLC and I own 3 rental properties. Can I put all 3 of my rentals into a single LLC? The answer to that question is yes, you can do that. What happens, however, is if you have a slip and fall at property number 1, they're going to sue the LLC that owns the house, not you, so you're still protected, but they're suing the LLC, and that LLC owns 2 other rental properties now. So now both those other rental properties are at risk of losing because you had a slip and fall on one property. So it's not advisable to put more than one rental property into an LLC, because if you have problems at one, you might lose the other as well. And so what we would do is we'd set up a holding company, usually owned by husband and wife. That holding company wouldn't do anything. And then we'd set up a sub LLC for every rental property. It was a great gig for me. I made a lot of money setting these up because I would set up an LLC for every rental property my clients owned. So it was a lot of money on my part. And in about 2004, 2005, the state of Utah approved by statute the Series LLC. And the Series LLC is a single business entity. So it's one company, it's one LLC. But it's unique in the sense that it's allowed to create what are called series within it, or underneath it is maybe another way to put it. So these series are like sub companies. They're like a sub LLC, except they're not. They're not a sub company. It's a series of the mothership LLC. But each series is separate for liability purposes. So in this slide, we have Ian's Rentals LLC. It's a series LLC. He creates series number 1, which owns his first rental property. He then creates series number 2, and that owns his second rental property. So how do you create a series? Well, to create a series, it's just a blank form. You fill out, sign, date it, and that's how you create a series. You do not file it with the state. There's no cost associated with it. You just pull out a piece of paper, fill out, you create a unique name for that series, sign and date it, and you've just created a series. And that series is going to be separate for liability purposes. And you can do this as many times as you want. So Ian has 2 Utah rental properties. He also has a house in Ohio. And he can totally use his Utah Series LLC and own the property in Ohio as well. Okay? So the Series LLC, if you're going to be a landlord, this is what you want. I mean, I don't even discuss other things anymore with my clients. If they say, I'm picking up rental properties, I say, great, you need a Series LLC. Even if you just have one, it's totally fine. You can still utilize it as a Series LLC. And maybe 5 years down the road, you're going to pick up your second rental. And since you've already got a Series LLC, you're ready to go. Okay? So definitely kind of take some time, and I'm going to tell you at the end of the class tonight where to get this information. But read up on the Series LLC. If you're going to be a landlord, there's just no way in the world you're going to not have one of these. And it's a little bit different, right? There's a little bit of a learning curve. You run this company a little bit differently than a regular LLC. The nice thing about it is there's one fee with me, so you don't have to keep paying me over and over and over again. One fee with me. You get one bank account, which makes your life much more efficient. And then you just keep your bookkeeping separate. So yeah, you utilize one bank account, but then you have QuickBooks or a spreadsheet that keeps all those accounts separate for each one of the series. Okay. Out-of-state rentals, just kind of a side note here. Your Utah LLC can own properties out of state, no problem. The issue with that, however, is if your LLC owns property in Colorado, let's say, you're going to have to register your LLC to do business there. It's not a problem, you can do it, but it's going to cost you money, right? You're going to have to register your LLC in Colorado. You're going to have to get a registered agent in Colorado. You're going to have to pay the registered agent, and you're going to pay the renewal fees for the Colorado registration, just like you pay the renewal fees for the Utah registration. So you've doubled up your registration fees. And if you start owning properties in a lot of states, you don't want to be paying thousands of dollars in renewal fees just to keep this one LLC active in other states. So what you're going to use is an asset holding trust or real estate trust for title and management of that property. That holding trust is owned by a series of your LLC for asset protection purposes, but now you don't have to register your LLC in all the different states. And so it's a way to save money and convenience, right? But it works great. It works great. So a single Utah Series LLC can own dozens and dozens of properties all over the country. in one business entity, and keep all those liabilities separate. It's really an amazing tool. It's revolutionized real estate investing. So that's great. And I'm going to show you where to get more information later on that. Just another diagram. Again, he just, Ian picked up a duplex now. So he's got his 2 Utah houses, a property in Ohio, and now he has a duplex. Okay. And he can just keep doing that. He can keep buying more and more properties. Okay. So now Ian's going to get married, and they buy a family house. So now he's got a primary residence, a personal residence. So first thing he's going to do, he's going to add Isabel, that's his wife, as a 50% member of his Series LLC. That's going to give him that charging order protection. And he's going to set up his family trust. Now, you don't have to wait until you're married to set up a family trust, and I don't recommend waiting. You can actually end up using a family trust to separate assets from your marriage. It's actually a kind of a cool little tool to use. If you're single, you can set up a family trust. And then when you go to get married, you can use your individual family trust to separate your assets that you bring into the marriage, separate from marital property. And that way, in the event of a divorce, and remember, 50% of marriages end up in divorce. In the event of a divorce, your assets that you kept separate can be kept separate from the divorce, and your soon-to-be ex-spouse won't get access to them. Okay, so there are good reasons to set up a family trust even before you get married. So again, there's lots of little moving parts to asset protection, and I'm covering a lot of ground. So I just want to give you, again, just this high overview of all the different things, and then you can follow up with what you need. Okay. Family limited partnerships. I'm not going to cover that because we really don't talk much about that. I'd rather get on to the trusts. So here are the 3 trusts. And this is a good time. I would memorize this slide, okay? We have the asset holding trust. It's also called a real estate trust, a property trust, or a land trust. If you've been in real estate for a while, you have probably heard the term land trust. If you've gone to real estate education seminars and whatnot, they all talk about the land trust. The land trust is a very specific kind of trust that we don't have in Utah, so we call it an asset holding trust or a real estate trust. It's designed for privacy. That's its primary goal is privacy. How does that work? Very simply, if you have even a Series LLC, and you own 3 rental properties in Utah, so there's a slip and fall at one property, those tenants go to a lawyer. The lawyer looks up who owns this house, and they're going to see that it's a series of Jeff's LLC. Well, once they know that, they can look up title to see if there's other series under my Jeff's LLC, and they can find other assets that I own. So the more assets the lawyer finds, the bigger target I become. Because the lawyers go, oh, holy cow, Jeff's got a lot of assets. He's got a lot of money there. I can sue this guy all day long. And if I win, he's got the assets to pay good. But these trusts, because you create a trust for every property, and that's what's on title, your LLC is not listed. So there's no way to connect the dots to other properties your LLC owns. So it creates a smokescreen, and it prevents prying eyes from connecting the dots of all your different assets. Okay? That's what we use that for. We also use it to hold title to properties outside the state of Utah for out-of-state rental properties. It works really great there as well. Okay? Now, down below, we have the Family Living Trust. That is a trust for controlling your assets, right? Its primary purpose is to pool all together all of your assets, your entire estate, and control them and allocate them after you pass away. Without a family trust, you're going to go to probate. Your estate will become public because the probate court is public information. So everybody will know what assets you have. People can dispute the estate. Heirs can squabble and argue. And your estate could end up paying tens of thousands, if hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees to prevent heirs from, screaming and yelling over different assets and who gets what. A family trust avoids all of that. It'll save you money, it'll save you time, it'll avoid probate, it'll keep your estate private, and it will prevent your heirs from challenging how you want to allocate your assets, right? It keeps you in control of the assets that you've built over your lifetime, right? And the family living trust is the best way to do that. Every family should have one, period. Okay, oops, back up. Then we have the asset protection trust. Its primary function is protection. It's irrevocable, and that for your purpose just means highly protective. And it can protect from all kinds of lawsuits. It can protect stuff from a divorce. It can protect stuff from debts. It can protect things from bankruptcies. And it doesn't matter that there's one or more people. You can set up a single person asset protection trust. So if you're single and you set up this protection trust, you're getting even better protection than a multi-member LLC. Now, the glitch here, this protection trust doesn't work for everybody. To get that kind of protection, and it's great protection, but to get that kind of protection, you have to give up something, right? You don't get something for free in this world. To get that protection, what you're saying is all the assets that I put inside this asset protection trust, I'm putting them there to hold long-term for protection. And I can no longer draw income off those assets. So let me do it by way of example. If I have a series LLC with 10 rental properties in it, and that LLC is cash flowing $5,000 a month, and that's what I need to live on, right? That's my only source of income, is the rent for my rental properties. I cannot put those rental properties or that LLC into an asset protection trust because I'm going to lose the cash flow from my rentals, and suddenly I will not have money to live on. Okay. Now, another example, I'm a lawyer and I have a day job, so I have income to pay my daily needs. I also have an LLC with 10 rental properties in it that cash flows $5,000 a month. I don't need that $5,000 to live on, which is great because I have my day job. I can then put that LLC and all those properties underneath an asset protection trust, highly protected against pretty much anything from car accidents, personal debts, all personal liabilities protected, right? And I can put them in there now because I don't need the income to live on. That's the biggest glitch, right? If you need the cash flow from an asset on a regular basis to help with your living expenses, then that's not an asset that can go in this protection trust. Let me name you one big asset, and I'm going to guess it's probably your biggest asset that really goes well in an asset protection trust. And that's your primary residence, right? Many of us forget that our primary residence is an asset. It's an appreciating, high value asset. And if you've owned your house for more than 3 or 4 years here in Utah, you've got a lot of equity in your primary residence, right? And if you get in a car accident here in Utah and there's a $2 million judgment against you, your car insurance is only paying out $250,000 because that was your liability limits. You got to come up with $1.75 million. And if you got a house with $500,000 in equity, that's gone. The court can force you to sell your primary residence. And you can only keep, I think it's about $60,000 or $70,000 of equity that you can keep. The rest of it's going to go to the plaintiffs, and you're going to lose your primary residence and all that equity. But if your primary residence is in an asset protection trust, it's totally protected. There's no going after it. And since your primary residence doesn't generate income, doesn't matter. It's not a rental property, right? I believe that everybody with a primary residence that has significant equity in it should go into an asset protection trust. And that's the best way to protect your primary residence. If you don't set up an asset protection trust for your primary residence, then the primary residence goes in the family living trust. That's where that goes. And that's to avoid probate if you were to die.
Hey,
Okay.
Jeff, quick question on
Yeah.
that. What about the
Yeah.
lien holders on that particular asset? Like, for
Um,
example, your mortgage company on your primary residence.
yeah. Totally fine. Totally fine. The,
But
the the irrevocable asset protection trust is an exemption from the due on sale clause,
okay,
just like the family living trust is.
what about the liability to those lien holders?
The liability is the loan agreement that you have and the security on the asset. So the lender that has a lien or trust deed on your property, they can still foreclose on the trust deed in a foreclosure action, right? A foreclosure is different than being sued for a car accident.
Right.
So
Okay.
if someone liens a property, that's always going to be a lien, and that lender can always foreclose on that property. But remember, in a foreclosure, if there's equity, if a bidder pays more than what is owed, that extra amount goes to you, the homeowner, because that was your equity, right? So
Right.
it's not always a full loss in a foreclosure. Whereas if there's a judgment and the court's liquidating that asset to pay a judgment, you're losing the whole thing.
Right.
Okay. So
Okay.
yes, lien holders can still foreclose, but other lawsuits, bankruptcies, debts. So for example, if you have a mortgage and or a personal guarantee on a rental property, on say a hard money loan, and you default on that loan, and you essentially file bankruptcy on your LLC because it didn't have any money to pay that loan back, and now the lender's going after you personally, right? Because that personal guarantee that all private money lenders make you sign, now you've got personal liability on that loan that you didn't pay back. And from there, they can go down to everything else you own, including other LLCs, primary residence, savings accounts, bank accounts, garnish wages, all of that, right? So that's why that irrevocable asset protection trust is so valuable, is that once things are in there, they're protected really, really, really strongly. Okay.
Hey, Jeff, just
Yeah.
a quick question. So, like, I have my house in a living trust, but it's not in an asset protection
Okay.
trust. Does that need to be also, or how does that work?
If we were on a phone call, right, you're my client, and you called me up and we were consulting here, I say, hey, Dave, how much equity do you have in that primary residence? You can make up a number if you don't want to tell people, right? Just
Okay.
you say $100,000. Like, okay, that's a good amount of money. We could certainly use the asset protection trust and protect that $100,000. The asset protection trust is it's not pricey, but it's a more expensive product. But if you said, hey, Jeff, I got $500,000 of equity in my primary residence, then I'm gonna go, Dave, yeah, let's put it into an asset protection trust.
So would that also be in your living trust?
They work side by side.
Okay.
So you have the family living trust that says who gets what, right? This has your heirs, your children, how you want everything split up. The protection trust doesn't do that. You are still the beneficiary of your protection trust. It's still your asset. You haven't given it to your kids yet. Okay? So the asset protection is for you to protect your asset while you're living for you. Once you die, then the asset protection trust goes and then becomes part of the family estate. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So while you're alive, this provides protection, and then once you die, they get combined and then allocated the way the family trust says. So typically, those with asset protection trusts have a family trust as well, because they do work kind of side by side with each other. They're not competing; they're more complementary to one another, and they serve different purposes.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, and since we're at 8:00, I will open it up for questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is it possible to use, I guess you could use an LLC or use just an entity to create a document that can be filed as a lien against one of your rental properties for the equity that's in there, and change it up every years or couple years to continue protecting that equity that's in there and from being sued?
Yeah. What you're talking about is called equity stripping. It is an asset protection technique. And what you're doing is you're stripping out all the equity out of a property so that it's no longer a target. Because there's no sense on going, suing somebody where their only asset is leveraged 100%, right? The lawyer's not going to get paid. That's the end of this. And then the lawsuit ends, right? Lawyers only take cases they know they can get paid on. So yes, equity stripping is a protection strategy. If you go out and get an actual loan, a bank loan, a HELOC, private loan from a bank or a third party, great. That is a very solid way to equity strip. Your question, however, is, can one of my business entities loan another entity and secure it on the real estate as a lien to strip out that equity? Well,
Correct.
Only if money really changes hands and there was a legitimate purpose for that loan. So you cannot create a loan just to create a loan. You can't just create a loan for 100, where one of your entities, loans another entity $100,000 and secures it on the real estate. Court's going to look at that and go, okay, you own both. Did the money really change hands? Did you really send $100,000 over to the other business? And then what did that business use that money for? And if you don't have good answers to those two questions, they're going to blow right through that. But if you have a legitimate need, then it works. So for example, I had a client with a bunch of properties, and her mother was giving her some money. And over time, it was about $75,000. The mom didn't really care, about being paid back. It was her mom. But the daughter wanted to strip out all the equity on these rental properties in case she was sued. And so the mother did create a note and deed, kind of like a HELOC. It was an open-ended $125,000 loan to the daughter. And we recorded trust deeds on the property. So we stripped out all the equity of the daughter's property. But the mother had given the daughter money, right? Money did change hands, and there was a legitimate relationship there. So yes, it's got to be a legitimate loan to do that. You just can't make it up. Did that answer your question?
Okay, thank
Quick
you. Yes.
comment to that, Jeff. So
Yeah.
Equity stripping could be a double-edged sword. It could be a strategy. If you strip the equity to go buy another rental property, you're kind of creating asset protection on the one, using the equity, buying the next property, and increasing your cash flow, increasing the size of your portfolio. So it can, in my opinion, it can be a very strategic thing.
Yeah. And there are educators and investors who really utilize that as an investment strategy, right? They're very leveraged. They pull out all the equity of every property, but then they use that money to buy more properties, right? You strip out that equity, take the cash, and go blow it in Vegas. Yeah, then,
Yeah.
then no, right? And that's I hear debates on that. Some people are like, oh yeah, I leverage it to like 80-90% of its value, right? Yeah, that's gonna give you cash. It's gonna free stuff up. You're gonna do more deals, buy more properties. But when you're that leveraged, remember there's also a domino effect, right? If you don't have a lot of liquidity somewhere, and those dominoes start to fall, a lot of dominoes could fall in succession, right? So I'm probably more conservative. I don't strip out equity like I know a lot of people do. That's just my investing style.
Yeah.
It's just my style. So an asset protection trust, I can do them for about $1,500. Most attorneys are about $4,000 for an asset protection trust. I do them for about $1,500 to $2,000, and then my family living trust are $1,500 as well. My series LLCs are $895. My standard LLCs, and we didn't talk about the standard LLC. If you're a flipper, most likely you're going to get a standard LLC, not a series. So a series LLC is for your buy and holds, and then the standard LLC, or called a business LLC, will be for your flipping, or your wholesaling, or your private lending, or your real estate commissions if you're an agent. So the business LLC is more of a tax saving strategy where we save taxes on the income that we're generating in that line of business, like real estate agent commissions, flipping, wholesaling. That income that you generate from those activities is considered ordinary income, which is taxed at higher rates. And if you've ever heard of an S corp, right? The business LLC is what you do the S corp status on to get the tax savings. Okay, there is asset protection there. So if you're a flipper, right, that LLC is still going to protect you from slip and falls on your flip projects, right? But because the flip, you're not going to hold on long term, and there's no tenants in there, there's nobody sleeping in there, the risk is much lower. So when I talk about rental properties, I'm really talking about risk, liability, and protection, because there's a lot of risk in a rental property. On a flip project, it's moderate liability, right? There's some, because there are people on the property, people could get injured on the property, but contractors are going to have their own insurance. Contractors are a little bit more savvy about navigating, homes. So there's just not as much risk. And so I'm more concerned about tax savings on that, and I'm more concerned about liability on rentals.
Looks like Inez has her hand up.
Okay, you want to unmute and speak, or you can type it in the chat. Ask her to see.
My question already answered, so sorry.
Oh, no,
you're good.
Thank you.
Jeff, real quick on a asset protection trust with your personal residence, how does that play with a HELOC?
No problem at all. Now, if your house is in either a family living trust or an irrevocable trust, either one, and you do a refinance or get a HELOC, the bank is most likely going to make you take the property out of that trust, put it into your individual name to process the loan, and then it can go back into the trust, either trust. Very common, always done. But here's the thing. After the refinance or the HELOC, make sure the house gets retitled back into the trust, whether it's your family trust or the protection trust. Because this happens all the time. All the time. I can't tell you how many probates I do on real estate, and the family says, but we have a family trust. We set it up. My dad had a trust. I said, well, was the house titled in the trust? They're like, oh, did we have to do that? Yes, you did. Yes. Yes, you have to title that. But what happens is you do that refinance, it comes out of the trust, and the title company doesn't put it back. Happens all the time. And the family doesn't realize that happened, right? They didn't think, oh, we're taking it out for the loan and then it's got to go back. They just know that the bank did something with the title company and there were some changes, right? So first suggestion, close with REI Title. That's my title company. Because all my escrow officers are trained that if we take a property out of an entity for a refinance or a HELOC, that they automatically put it back. They always put it back 100% of the time. At closing, we bring that deed to closing and we say, here is the deed that's going to put it back into your family trust. And we're going to sign it and we're doing it. And it's all part of the closing process. Most title companies don't do that. I don't know why. They just don't. So yes, make sure it goes back in, whether the LLC, family trust, protection trust, that it goes back into the entity after the refinance. It happens more than I can say.
And accessing the cash inside the HELOC isn't a problem if it's an
no, because that's straight from the bank.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
I'm going to share my screen real quick, and I'm going to show you where to get access to some things on my website. Okay. So here's my website. You guys can see that right now, right?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the home page. Down at the bottom, the get free. This is what you all want, right? The free stuff.
Love the free stuff.
Yeah. So there is a public library. There's some articles. There's actually a number of articles in here, I believe, on asset protection. estate planning, retirement accounts, some self-direction based tips for investors, basic liability. So there's some good information in the public library. The Mastery Library does require membership. These ebooks, these are my getting started ebooks. They're all PDFs. Here's one on limited liability companies. It's just a PDF. You can download it to your desktop. You can share it with friends. And basically, it's going to teach you everything about LLCs and far more than I covered tonight, right? So part 1 talks about the business LLC, the tax savings one, and part 2 talks about the series LLC. This one right here, running your LLC, that talks about corporate governance, right? How to run an LLC, the bookkeeping, the taxes, signing documents, things like that nature, tax write-offs. So that's got good information about running the LLC. You can also get more information on seller financing. So that's a good introduction to seller financing. This is the real estate or land trust. So if you want more information on that, you can get this guidebook. Self-direction, that's an investment technique of using retirement accounts in your own real estate investing. If you want information about how to partner with others, here's a guidebook on the family living trust. So you can get more information on that one. More information on the asset protection trust. And if you're a Spanish speaker, I do have my LLC guidebook in Spanish. Or if you'd rather watch a video instead of read, then if you want to learn about the LLCs, you can go to this video. Or if you want to learn about the trust, you can go to that video. So we can just go right here. And then I've got this video on the 3 trusts used in real estate. Okay. Other ways to get help on this REI help page. If you ever have questions, members of my website can call me and have a quick 5-minute question with me. That's a great benefit of being a member of the website. Because you're always, in real estate, you're always going to have these little questions that pop up all the time and you need a quick answer. I can't tell you how many times I see them at an event or they email and say, hey, Jeff, I got a quick question. Well, that's great. I know it's a quick question for you, but when I work with 4,000 real estate investors, one quick question turns into a full-time job. And I can't answer everybody's quick questions, right? But if you're a member of the website, free call with me, get your question answered. If you're not a member, you can always book time with me in 20, 40, or 60-minute increments. And the time is yours. I'll teach you seller financing. I'll teach you asset protection. I'll answer your questions. Doesn't matter, whatever you want, you got me for that time. If you're a full-time real estate investor, some clients like Mitch are in my concierge legal program. These are the only clients that I actually work personally with anymore. And there's a number of benefits, but basically you have your own private lawyer. And you get my cell phone and we talk on the cell phone. You just text me, say, hey, Jeff, I got questions, and then we go at it. There's bigger discounts off legal work and other stuff. But you get more information about that, how to get help with me. If you need legal products, you can go to the legal tab. And down here, you can order the business or tax savings LLC, a series LLC. The IRA LLC, that's the 3rd LLC we did not talk about tonight. That's a self-direction tool if you're using your IRA or 401k. Or you can get the asset protection trust, the family living trust, and then the solo 401k trust. That's another self-direction tool. So you can get LLCs and trusts here, you can get legal documents here, and you can buy forms here. If you're a member of the website, there's bigger discounts off the entities. All the real estate investing forms are free. Am I logged in? I'm not logged in. Yeah, if I were logged in, I would just click on this or this, and my seller financing contracts, my wholesaling contracts, my lease agreements, my assignments, my lending. I mean, all my real estate investing forms are right on this website, and they're all free for members. If you're looking for more education, my online courses, there's about 200 hours of education on different topics. Rookie Investor is an introductory program. Professional Investor program introduces you to most real estate investing techniques. And then these mastery programs are deep dives into specific topics. So if you want to a deep dive in seller financing. This is about a 10-hour course on seller financing. There are textbooks for all of these, videos, the PowerPoint slide deck, and quizzes to test your knowledge. My live courses are here. I teach 2 to 3 live courses every month on various topics, almost always free. You can click on the calendar of events. That'll just bring up the calendar of what events are coming up. And then all members of my website are automatically members of the REI Tribe. This is a networking education group. We meet every Tuesday from noon till about 2. There are 4 coaches that teach the tribe. Mitch is one of those coaches. So Mitch is a coach with me as part of the REI Tribe, and we rotate. In fact, Mitch is teaching next Tuesday. That's what he said at the very beginning of this webinar tonight. It's if you're a member of the website, you're automatically a member of the tribe. But if you're not, you can always show up. No problem. Just show up. Hear one of the coaches speak for a couple of hours, see how great it is, and then you're going to want to join and become a member of the website. Okay, so that's just another benefit. But for now, for the most part, for what we talked about tonight, this is where you want to go, right? These 2 videos, the LLCs, the 3 trusts, or if you'd rather read about the stuff, there are guidebooks right here, PDF guidebooks that you can download and read. Membership on the website is $895 a year. The forms themselves that are free are worth about $2,000. The free 5-minute calls with me, that's valuable. The tribe, that's a 2-hour class every week with 4 amazing coaches. That's probably worth 20 grand because that's Renatus, right? Everyone knows Renatus. You pay 20 grand to be part of Renatus for a once-a-week class. Now you're just paying $895 a year. Okay. Yeah, and tons of benefits, and everything's just right there on the website. So if you have more questions, just check it out. If you, there should be a somewhere contact us link somewhere on there. You can also email me through the website somewhere. Where is that? I think it's here. Or request a consult. So right there, you can do that. That just sends an email, and you can email me. Okay, got 10 more minutes, so I'm happy to blow out some questions. Let's undo stop share. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually just a personal thing we're trying to do. Is there, or do you know of a way where we can take a house that already has a good loan on it? It's a VA loan. My son and his friend want to go, or have agreed to go into a partnership on 50-50 on the house. It's owned by his friend, but he doesn't want to have to deal with it as far as the rental, the upkeep, the collecting, all that kind of stuff. Whereas my son is willing to do that.
Okay.
So he has a Series LLC already set up.
Okay.
He wants to put it into that Series LLC, but he's coming up against roadblocks that he has to refinance it into the corporation. No. Is there another way?
No. So does he want to keep the VA loan in place?
Yes, but it is under the friend's name. So
that's fine. That's seller financing.
Okay.
Totally fine, totally doable. We do it every day. So your son will buy the property. It'll go through a traditional closing at a title company. He'll buy it in his Series LLC. The VA mortgage loan in the seller's name will stay in place. And then just depending on the rest of the terms, your son will take over those payments on that mortgage. Great. It's a great way to pick up properties. And you're going to see a lot of seller financing in the next couple of years. And if you need help structuring that, I'm more than happy to help you. And so
yeah, that was going to be my next question. Yeah, I was going to ask you, can you handle that?
Oh yeah, totally, yeah.
Okay, now he has another property, his own personal residence, that he would like to do the same thing to, put that into, because that's in a VA loan under his name. He wants to put that into an LLC and then rent it out and go buy another one.
Yeah, he could totally do that. Now, I don't know VA lending rules and whether or not he can go out and get another VA loan when he still
Yeah,
has one in place.
I used to be a mortgage lender, so
Okay.
he
Oh,
can.
yeah.
He's limited on how much he can do it at them.
Okay, yeah. That would be my only concern. That's an answer I cannot give. But as far as the transaction, totally fine.
Okay, awesome. Yep. Okay, got to get your information here then.
Yeah, in fact, I'll type in the phone number. You're going to get voicemail.
Okay.
But you can leave a message. We do return phone calls.
Okay.
There's my phone.
Okay.
And there's my email. And then
okay.
There's the website address. The best is really email. Yeah, that's the best way to get in touch with me. REI Title is the name of my title company. We seem to do everybody's seller financing deals. We're just known as the seller financing people. we do more of them than about anybody.
Okay, so I'll send you an email with the subject one of Mitch's students.
Didn't quite hear that.
I said I can go ahead and email you, and in the subject line I can put one of Mitch's students.
Yes, please. Yeah, if you do email me and you want to connect me to this presentation, just say you were on the call with Mitch.
Okay.
Yep, happy to take care of you.
All right, great.
No, thank you.
Hey, Jeff, with seller financing, are you worried at all about the difference in the, interest rate that the seller has and now the new interest rates, and maybe the lender saying, there's a pretty big difference here. Maybe we ought to look at trying to call the note due. Are you worried about that?
I don't think so. Let me explain kind of what Dave is talking about, because I've heard this for 20 years. So if interest rates are at 7%, and that's what everybody's mortgages are at, 7%, and people are doing seller financing, and if they were to go out and get their own loan, it would be at 7% as well. Banks don't really care that people are seller financing their loans because the bank's not going to make any more money because interest rates are 7%. But what I've heard forever is, but if interest rates ever go up and banks can make more money by calling a note due and then reloaning it out, they're going to start calling the notes due en masse, right? So for the last 5 years, we had interest rates at 3 and 4%. Unbelievably low interest rates, psychotically low interest rates. And now they're at 6 and 7%. So will banks be more aggressive at calling notes due because interest rates are higher? And if they call a note due, they can get that loan paid back, put the money into their account, and then loan it out at 7%. We'll have to kind of wait and see if that actually plays out. I think it's my opinion that credits banks, gives banks more intelligence than I think they really have. Because that would mean work. They're going to have to go through and find which of these mortgages have been seller financed, right? They're going to have to search title records. So I don't believe banks are just going to start looking for seller financed mortgages, right? Regardless of what interest rates do. I think the only time banks are going to be concerned about this is if they're given a red flag that the property may have sold seller financing, and that gives the bank a reason to look into the file, right? I just don't see banks going, interest rates are high, so let's just go out and find all these seller financing transactions. I don't see that. Now, local credit unions, small local banks, and Utah Housing Authority, those are different. That's a different subject matter altogether. You may see them be more aggressive. But a maybe. That's a maybe. So for me, the due on sale clause is just something to understand something to have an exit strategy for, and then go on with my day. Right? If you have an exit strategy, then there's no worry. Right? If you can sell the property or refinance the property or cash it out if it's ever called due, I don't worry about it. So reduce your red flags, have an exit strategy, and don't worry and don't stress. There are investors I have a client with well over 100 seller financed rental properties, well over 100 of them. Because there's no way to build a portfolio of rental properties without seller financing. You can't do it. You only get 10 mortgages in your name, so you're capped at 10 rental properties. So your only option is either cash, and you have to have a lot of cash to be buying $400,000 rental properties in Utah, right? Or you're going to be buying on seller financing. It's just another technique. It's an advanced technique, sure. There's some complications, some risks, but it's like anything. It's just like we talked about tonight. Understand the risks, do what you can to protect yourself, know your exit strategy, and go to bed happy. Don't worry about every little thing. You just can't. It's not worth your time. It's not worth the wrinkles.
Jeff, this has been incredible, man. Thank you.
Good.
I actually I've heard you speak a bunch, but I've taken notes on things that I need to call you later and stuff that I got out of today's lesson. So thank you. It's always
Absolutely.
enlightening and illuminating to chat with you. So
I'm happy to come back someday.
yeah, we'd love to have you back. You're always welcome on the call. And I'm excited to teach at the tribe meeting on Tuesday. For those of you here in Utah, make sure that you make it. You're going to be getting an email from us.
Even
Check
if
us
you're
out on our
not
website.
a member of the website, just show up on Tuesday.
Yep, exactly. It's going to be taught at REI Title.
See what it's like. Yep.
REI Title in Salt Lake. So Jeff, thank you again, my friend. Guys, thank you for being here today. We really appreciate it. It means a lot to us that you show up every Wednesday, that you're here and participating in the call. We love to do this, so we love to see every week. Grateful to have you here. We will be back next week at 7 p.m. We've got some incredible lessons that we're going to be going over. We're going to be doing live seller financed calls. So Maeli's gonna turn on the speakerphone and she's gonna start smiling and dialing for some of those seller finance deals that are out there. So you don't want to miss it. We're gonna be there Wednesday at 7 p.m. In the meantime, guys, stay healthy, stay happy, stay safe, stay hungry to go out and do some real estate. I love you all. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.